I'm reading.
So which part do we want to talk about first, ladies?
So I did the way I did my notes for this week is I structured it by the chapter 6 from the book, the chapter 7, and then just like small notes I took from Refugee. So I guess we can start with like the book if you guys want to, and kind of like some of the things they were talking about, like as far as historical narratives and their importance, and like current events, and like the importance of questioning the stories that are being told and putting multiple perspectives into view and things of that nature. So I know, I guess like what I feel like when I was growing up, I don't think I had an issue doing that. I think I did it too much. So I think I was able to come, like when I was reading it, I was kind of like, I was one of those kids that was like, but what about them? Or what about them? Or, but what about, like, I always was just, ready to ask for more and just like soak up as much material and perspectives as I could. So it was interesting, like reading and seeing how the reverse of that can happen and how people can just see it from just one side as opposed to being able to ask themselves and self reflect and kind of like self-assess themselves about the different perspectives. So that was kind of cool to me just to start us off.
And you're talking about the critical comprehension or the refugee?
They tie in it ties into both, but I
Got
was
it.
starting with like just like the concepts that were mentioned. Like in my notes, I have that the author was arguing that critical comprehension means going beyond the surface, like the a deeper level of understanding to uncover different biases and power structures. So like that's kind of what I was getting
Okay.
into with all of that.
And so looking at the books that are in the critical comprehension, the
Mm-hmm.
I marked the fry bread one. Did y'all read that
Gotcha.
one?
I haven't gotten a chance to read those yet.
So
It's like full on. Well, that one.
so
Which
it's
one is that?
basically it's like one of the things that it mentions is after reading fry bread is just a shape. So you do an activity. Fry bread is not just one shape. There's not just one type. There's not just
Mhm.
one size. So it all goes into that body image. And we're not just
Got
one
you.
color. We're not one shape. We're not one size. And
Yeah,
it goes with what you're saying of seeing from the outside in.
got you. And what was it called again? I want to kind of go in
Fry
more.
bread.
Fry bread. Okay.
Which
It's on
is
page 185.
which
185. Okay.
kind of connects with all the discussions that we've had so far in terms of looking at self and how we want the kids to just reflect on themselves sometimes. And I guess as a whole, when we talk about diversity, I'm trying to how we think about diversity is like you don't ever want to you want the kids to think about how am I want to I can't get it out. We want the kids to not look at each other as one thing, but we're all different shapes, different sizes, different colors, different. You know what I'm saying? It's like you when you think about what the book stands for and how you can make that correlation of how you want the kids to relate to each other in the classroom. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to say, I
yes.
was just gonna get it out.
And like one of the things, this book is about Native Americans.
That's
Yeah.
what I was about to say. Now I know what you're talking about. I
Yeah.
had to like, I was like, wait, I can't remember the titles, but I went and looked and I'm like, oh, that's this one. Okay,
So
sorry, keep going.
one of the things says as as people that are not Native Americans, whenever we mention Native Americans, you picture the headdress, you picture the clothes, but it
Mm-hmm.
said go and Google
Hmm.
Native American, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what you get. You don't get these businessmen, these business women. You only
Right.
get that side of it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Eye opening.
it ties in with our last discussion with the last book we read.
We're reading. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, And we were saying that, the misconception is always there of, oh, it has to be a headdress and the feathers and da, da, da. And
Yeah.
reflecting on what you said, Victoria, of,
Not
the,
understanding like the origins and even the
exact-
geographical.
so it
Yeah.
all kind of ties into our conversation before. And I was like, this is exactly what we were saying is, we don't want kids to walk away thinking one way, or keeping those misconceptions. We want to try and clear them up as much as possible, if possible.
Yeah. And to kind of go back, now that I know that the story we were talking about, I appreciated in that story too, kind of how it was like phrased and how they kind of like kept on saying like the repetition in the phrases to kind of like help expand on like the significance of each dish, I guess you could say. Like, you know what
Mhm.
I mean? Like, so yeah, I appreciated that too. And how it also, it I don't it had a good way of making it like educationally relevant, if that makes sense, like, or making it something that could be administered to children. You know how some books we had like difficulty seeing how we were able to like implement it inside of the classroom and things of that nature. I felt like this one, when I was skimming through it, was a good one. Like it was, so I appreciated that too. Now that I know what we're talking about, because I was like, wait, I don't know the titles of these. It's so many books that she
Yeah,
she tells us.
it's quite a bit. But for this book, I like, it's repetitive,
The
but
repetition. Mm-hmm.
part of it is great because you can use it from, multiple grade levels. Even,
Yeah.
out of the big older kids would say, oh, it's so kiddie. It's not like for the younger kids.
Right.
Right.
Graphics was great, but for me, I like how it says fry bread is you. Fry bread is us.
Yeah.
It's a way to incorporate the underlying theme of what the text is trying to relate to the kids without it being
Yeah.
just, oh, it's just for little kids, a little kids book. Any grade, it's you can make that connection with any grade.
The
I like.
connection.
And I think having it looking and seeming like a kid book actually helps get
Yeah.
that across.
Yeah, for
Which is good
sure.
graphics. Yeah.
Yeah, the graphics. That's what I was gonna say too. The illustrations were. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then lesson 4 was the Holocaust, the story Rose Blanche
Mm-hmm.
on page 200. So one of the things I highlighted is one of the questions you would ask the kids, what would you have done if you were Rose? Would you have, I don't know if you've read this story or not, but would you have taken food to the kids that were behind the barbed wire fence? Would you have just seen it and moved on like everybody else?
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? To make that connection with kids, we always try to incorporate writing as much as possible to get things to put their thoughts down on paper. And to make that connection, I think a lot of students would possibly, after you read the story and you engage with them with it, it would be a
Mm-hmm.
good writing piece just to see what they would say. You know what I'm saying? Just to see
Mm-hmm.
their thoughts would go as it relates to, because, when it comes on to historical text, it's always difficult for them to put themselves in that place.
Yes.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
very difficult. And so
Yeah.
it would be interesting to see how students would respond to that as a writing prompt. It'd be very interesting to see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That definitely puts things in different perspectives because I don't have a lot of writers in my class yet. Like we're still working on like the basics with reading. So that definitely gives me a different perspective if I were to like to work with older grade levels and maybe different types of classrooms, how that would be incorporated there. But minor, we're still working on our ABCs, y'all.
Because you're in a
We're working
spec
on
class,
it.
right?
Yeah,
Has to be
self-contained.
expected.
Yeah. So we're
Yours
working
is
on
going to
it.
be just familiarizing them.
Familiarizing concepts. Yeah.
Surprising them with it. And, I'm a big proponent for responding to a text and not just writing it on paper pencil. Like
Mm-hmm.
to use, oh my gosh, not, oh, the app went away, but the kids could record their responses
Like
Okay.
Flipgrid.
Flipgrid, yes, that's what I'm trying to remember.
Gotcha.
To get away from us. So it's, for the younger kids, we would use Flipgrid, art, whatever it is to get them to respond, just to
Mm-hmm.
be so that we can see their thinking or hear their
Yeah.
thinking. So, we have to figure out some creative ways for those little ones to share as well.
Mhm.
But yeah, that would be definitely a great way to see how children would respond to this historical text.
And then lesson 5 was a good one too. Separate is never equal. And to me,
Mm-hmm.
they
I read
mentioned
that one.
about the illustrator, how the illustrator really made you feel with this. And to
Mm-hmm.
me, the illustrator did more than the words.
Yeah.
Because like when it's talking about the dark kids, the school's gloomy, the sky's gloomy and everything. But when it's talking about the white, it's white buildings,
It's,
business look.
right.
To me,
Yeah.
the illustrations did better than the words.
Yeah, and with the illustrations too, I'm a visual reader. Like I have to
Mm-hmm.
allow the kids, with the it's making that connection of, if it's, how would you, it's kind of a touchy subject sometimes, but how would you get kids to see the difference in what's being portrayed? How would you make that connection? I'm always,
Right.
how would you make that connection with them?
And
Yeah, I
the
mean, I think that the illustrations were a good starting point for
Mm,
sure.
book,
Um,
and the
I
book
think,
mentions asking, how did that scene make you feel? Or how
yeah,
did it make you feel that this was all dark and this is all
yeah.
light?
Hmm. Yeah.
yeah. I feel like when I was reading it, I was seeing it kind of like, I guess from an older, I guess I tried to put myself in the seat of my student when I was reading it too. So I can't really, on that part, I don't really have a self perspective. I would have to read it again to kind of see like how I would think, because I was just thinking about them the entire time and how it might like affect their viewpoints. And I think the illustrations were a good start, but I also think like like pointing those things out in real life and in real time can help
Hmm.
too, of course in a very respectable manner and things of that nature. Because like for me, we have like a very high, like I said before, African American and Hispanic population at my school. So just like getting them to understand the differences in cultures and things of that nature through illustrations and both like verbally is kind of like my approach with doing that. But I know like the book for me, like it was clear that there was a difference.
Mhm.
Now why not, while it might not been as apparent what difference it was at the beginning, it was very clear it was a difference. You know what I mean? So
And
yeah.
I don't remember exactly what the sign says because I read all of this during spring break. But
Mm-hmm.
the swimming pool, do y'all remember that part of it? It said something like no
Let
dark
me see.
people. Um,
I'm looking now. I'm like,
okay.
oh,
But like to me, I don't remember now what it said, but basically no black people, no Hispanic people could be at the pool. And like to me, that was like, what? What in the world? How would you feel if you went somewhere and that was the case? Like I cannot imagine.
Yeah. It's like an indication, like
yeah.
essentially you feel dirty. Like it's kind of, I feel
Yes.
if it was me and I was going and I was fellowshipping with all, everyone in the community or something of that nature. And I want to go and partake in different activities or things that I should be able to do that, keep me alive. Um, I just feel like I would feel completely dirty, or I would feel of less importance. I would feel unloved. I would feel it's a lot like
I
that
would feel I would feel so embarrassed if I took my
and
grandchildren
embarrassed.
somewhere and they said you couldn't come in because
You
of
can
your color.
grandkids can
Hmm.
you can come in, but your grandkids couldn't. And then I think about, even the kids, as kids in a class, because they make friends with each other. How is it
Hmm.
fair if you get to sit in the cafeteria and eat, and your best friend who is a different color has to sit somewhere else? You can't.
Hmm.
them, you can't play with them. You can, it's just, thinking about that, like how fair would it be if you get to do something and your other friends can't do it? It's just making that connection, how bad you would feel.
And it actually
Mhm.
says in the text, one of the questions you can ask them is, how would you react if you encountered this? And
Mhm.
I don't think I could share that with the kids because I would be furious. I
I,
mean,
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough conversation. Um, I'll say that, I'm mixed. So when I was growing up, I always wondered. I always wondered. Like, I grew up with my Black family, like at a Black school. Like, I always wondered. Like, it was just like, okay, why does this person's hair not look like mine? Why do they keep trying to touch it? Why do they, like, it was just always like wondering thoughts, like, why? Like, why am I sticking out in this way? Like, what makes me different? And I was always like missing that aspect. So it's a tough talk, but it's a needed talk. And it's a crucial talk, in my opinion. And I feel like I was able to finally get what I was looking for as a child in high school. Like, like it went on up until the point of high school because they felt like I wasn't ready, or I would be too emotionally disturbed, or it might affect how I interact with my peers inside of the classroom, or it might, and I understand the thought processes that occurred, but I also know how deeply I felt the emotions of wonder and how significant that kind of was on my self image and on just like my inner self and who I am as a person. So it's a tough talk, but it's a very needed talk. And I think my family went the right way about it at the end, and how they spoke about it and how they talked to me about it. But the time period in which they did that is the only thing I felt that was lacking. So yeah, that would be like my response to that part of that question for sure, because it's crucial.
yeah, it is. You're right.
um,
Um,
Let's see. And then the Statue of Liberty, her right foot. I'm embarrassed to say, have y'all read that one?
I skimmed through that one.
Okay, so did y'all know that the Statue of Liberty's foot is up in the back because it's a sign of she's walking? She's going away. Did y'all know that?
I didn't know that.
I'm
you know what?
52 and I have never heard that.
Well, I've heard of that before because I used to live in New York, and we always have, yeah, I've heard of that before, but I didn't think that it was true.
Yeah, it's true.
Like, I didn't realize that that's a true statement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I never heard it before. So this is all news to me. Okay, so I get okay. So I'm seeing, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
reading through some of the things now. Okay, so it's like a symbolism of like progress.
Yep.
Did not know this. I'm
It's
sorry, it's
funny.
not funny.
One of the questions was ask the students what new information. I was like, man, I learned new information.
New information, yeah, for sure. That would have been something I pointed out as I taught as well.
And I never ever like act like I know it if I didn't know it when it comes on with kids. I'd be like, you
Okay.
know what, guys, I just found out myself too.
That's important.
Yeah.
It's
So
important that they know that you're still learning.
yeah, I pointed out. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize this. So that's crazy.
All right.
Um,
I got that book.
what was the other one? Let's see.
Oh, did I skip?
We did. We did. We
Oh,
did.
unspeakable.
We did unspeakable. No, we did fry bread. Holocaust.
We didn't do lesson 3.
Mm-mm. All right.
I had never heard of, this is another crazy moment, but I had never heard of the Tulsa Race Massacre. Had y'all?
I've never heard of that before.
Okay.
I've never ever heard of that before.
What
So
about you, Victoria?
Sorry, I'm going in between because there are some people in the classroom right now, but I had heard of it.
You
I
have?
did. Yeah. So when I was in my AP literature course in high school, my instructor brought it up as a point of history that was deleted to allow like us, because it was a predominantly Black school, to allow us to understand how history is deleted and how certain parts are taken out, and how it's important that you stay on top of yourself to do your own research and look for those topics. So it was pointed out to me when I was in AP World Lit, well not World Lit, AP US History is when it was my very last year. Hmm. And then it was known. It's like that's like the Black Wall Street, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken, is how
it
it's
is.
referred. Yeah.
yeah, and yeah,
So
now I know, and I've made the connection. But once again, I grew my history part of my life that I learned was in the Caribbean. I had, Caribbean history. I didn't, the majority of the things that I've learned when it comes down to American history is going to college and here and getting that information. But things that you guys probably learned in high school, I didn't. So a lot of times I will see a topic and I'll be like, what is that? And I have to Google it because I'm like, oh, that is what if it's not something that I truly touched on in college or remembered about college, it's
Mhm.
kind of it's kind of hard for me to make that connection. But yeah, that's probably why I don't know. It wasn't familiar to me until I read this book.
All right. We ready to move on?
yep. Did you guys want to go to what did we just do? The critical comprehension. We
Mhm.
kind of went over that. Kind of went over
So we got refugee and then the chapter 7.
chapter 7. Okay, so that was the war and terrorism and justice and free.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
got you, got you.
Do we want to do the chapter 7 first, or do we want to do the book first?
Either way. I'm good.
Either way, it's up to you. I know I have quotes. I did quotes in my notes for chapter 7.
Okay, let me go back to my chapter 7. I did a Word doc, so everything I do, I'm going back to the Word doc to look at it. It makes it so much easier.
Like I say, I did not take notes on this one. I have such a hard time reading this format for some reason. Because if I read it on the computer where I can see it, then I'm not highlighting.
Yeah, I try to download it and then it makes it a little bit easier for me.
I know I should have.
Yeah. All right. So, war, terrorism, justice, and freedom.
So I know that one of the things that I wrote as uh a quote. I'm sorry. My assistant principal was just texting me through this too. So I was like looking at both. Exploring themes of justice and freedom through multicultural literature allows students to consider the meaning of these concepts across cultures and contexts. So I felt like that was like a quote that deeply reflected like the goal of connecting literature to like broader ethical discussions. So like I feel like these are heavy topics. And although, of course, we introduce them at an elementary school level, like when I was reading this one specifically, I couldn't help but think of higher grade levels. I don't know if that was just me or, but when I was reading it, it made me think of like, because we don't talk a lot about like, we talk about it, but we don't talk about it in elementary school, if that makes sense. I don't know. Like, or at least my
Yeah,
experience. You know what I'm saying? Like,
because we do have some books and some topics in terms of social studies which touch on wars, or issues that have happened in the past, but we don't spend a lot of time. We kind of touch on it and just probably teach to just a portion of the topics that are in, but we don't go in depth with it with the smaller kids. And it's because it's a touchy topic as well, because I always think about some of the kids that we have that come into the school from different countries and things that they have seen in terms of war, in terms of things that they may be coming from with their parents, or how they're here. So it's always a touchy topic when you're discussing it as a class as a whole.
Yeah.
If it's something within the curriculum that you're visiting, or you have to touch on, it's a touchy topic overall. And all for them, war, terrorism, freedom, all of that together is something that you don't really go in depth with little kids. So,
Yeah.
and when you say the word war, they immediately think, oh my gosh, we're fighting. They
Yeah.
could
That's
be.
what. Yeah. It's
so
hard.
so
And
I
then
can only
even,
imagine.
I'm sorry,
Go ahead. No, you're fine.
even with the little ones, the part where it says making meaning a current perspective, they
mhm.
have a hard time if it happened to other people in faraway places. Like there's a disconnect there for them understanding it.
Exactly. And for them to understand the reasons why something is taking place, it's totally beyond their realm.
Yes.
So it's hard for us to say, hey, this happened years ago, and and we're trying to explain to them and trying to bring it to their perspective. It's truly difficult for them with their young minds, to wrap their mind around it.
Where they're faraway places, maybe
Yeah,
Walmart and the grocery store.
exactly. If everything was yesterday,
Yeah.
it happened yesterday. No, it didn't happen yesterday. So
Yes.
it's hard to put, but and some of the vocabulary words associated, even the word terrorism, to explain terrorism or to explain what freedom is.
Yeah.
It to them, free means, oh, you didn't go to jail.
True.
So it's very hard to make those connections. So what I usually
Or it
say,
doesn't cost anything, or I
yeah,
can have it.
and so if I'm trying to make connections with these vocabulary words with them, it's really difficult. But I always try, you have to be creative in some sense. If, for example, teaching the word justice, what does justice mean? Trying to say, hey, if I have something and someone takes it from me, giving them examples and acting it out is probably an easier way to make that connection with them. But overall, it's hard for them to wrap their minds around it.
And then also like teaching it from a correct perspective. Like
Exactly.
not from my perspective or your perspective, but the truth in what happened. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's hard too.
Mm-hmm. And that's true. Picture books, I think, and because it mentions picture books, and some like picture books is probably a great way for kids to have discussions. To open up the discussion of what they see. What do you see? What do you think? What do you wonder? For them to talk about it, and then probably open up the floor for you to discuss these topics. Mm-hmm. Anything else? Let's see. Um, I think the ending with the conclusion kind of wraps it up really nice in a nice little package for us. Because I like to skip, jump, and hop when I'm reading. So I I do. So I like how it says every generation has its share of war and terrorism, and each deals with them in its own way. And yeah, and which is true. So if you were um speaking to an older group of kids, I would say you could probably make a connection with things that happened in the past and probably do like a timeline and have them make connections that way of things that have happened in the past, of how many years ago, and closer to our time now, and then current events, and make a time with current events now, and how we adjusting, or how would you adjust if this happened to you or whatever. So we all, I don't think there's things that happen a lot, like 9/11 is current, but when you think about the kids that we're teaching now, they don't know what happened, so it's trying to make some sort of timeline that will make it relevant for them. Be good, because we all, each generation deal with these issues in a different way.
Yes.
Yeah. And I love the questions that are embedded as well, that you can use to probably guide you along as you're trying to engage the students, I would say. you know.
Mm-hmm.
So the reflection questions is probably something that I would definitely use to kind of guide conversation with. And like I said, it's hard with the younger kids, but I would have to figure out a way to probably change wording up or do something to engage it with the picture books or something like that. But I would possibly use the questioning for probably my fourth and fifth grade, the older kids, to kind of help with, dealing with some of the topics. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right.
Mhm.
All right, moving to refugee.
Refugee.
So with refugee, I started off reading it by chapter, but then once I saw that the stories were changing, I couldn't focus. So I read all about Joseph, and then I read all about Isabel, and then I read all about Muhammad. So, and then I saw how they tied together. Did y'all do that?
I didn't, and I should have, because
I was just
I'm
about to say that I did not, and I
I
should
did
have
not. I'm halfway
too.
through because I have a couple. I'm not finished with it. I'm be honest with y'all. I'm not finished, but I should have, because I'm a little going back and forth. It's like I have to remember what happened and then pick it up. It's almost like watching a series. Does
Yes.
that make sense? It's like watching a series and trying to feel, oh, okay, this happened. Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that. I felt like I had to go back and reread to understand what was going on. So
It
that's
was easier to read whenever you read just about one, but then seeing how they connect together was good.
Mhm.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think
because
that's like the biggest thing with multiple like perspective books
mhm,
that makes them hard reads sometimes is when it's like structured in a way that's bouncing back and forth as
mhm,
opposed to like a way where it's like this is this character's journey, this is this character's journey, and this is this character's journey. But I
mhm,
think like the point in all of that, if we're looking at it for like a deeper meaning, was to see like the commonalities, kind of like you said,
Yes.
or was to, to be able to see those things. And I also liked that it was like a first person feel throughout. Um, let me see. It was realistic, I feel like, in a lot of ways, with as far as like sensory details, I guess, like making you feel like you're there, or like emotionally and things of that nature.
And I thought the same there too, because being from the kids' perspective, like I
Mhm.
put myself in there. And so
mhm.
I had a lot of feelings and emotions reading this. Like I hadn't thought about, oh, well, that's what they went through. So, I mean, to me, I'm glad they did it that way.
And I'm going to say that when you just said the emotions, I think that's the thing for me is reading it and be like, oh my gosh, this is a child that's experiencing this, and that connection that you're making with this child that's experiencing it is just the emotional part of like putting yourself in that child's shoes, you know. And the crazy thing about it is the scenarios that are presented in this book are scenarios that we have now, that it's not a Nazi knocking on your door and waking you up in the middle of the night, but you have other quote unquote looking, I would say, that take the place of the Nazi wake you up in the middle of the night, that these kids have experienced.
Yes.
So this book is actually so relevant to our children today that it just blows my mind. When I was reading it, I was like, I know of similar situations where kids have experienced things like this. So the emotional piece of it, you're correct, definitely emotional.
And then even seeing the dates put it into perspective for me, because I'm thinking one of these was 2015, one of them was 1994. Like I was living my life like normally. And to think that people were going through this while I was living normally, like it hurts a little.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry, ladies. I'm moving from one point to the next.
You're
No,
fine.
you're fine. You're fine. But yeah, I kind of agree. I agree with that. And like, I didn't look at the time periods per se. Yeah, I didn't look at, well, I guess like the only one I looked at was like the Syria. What was I don't know how to pronounce the name.
I said
I'm not even gonna.
Muhammad, but it wasn't Muhammad.
Yeah, it's like Ma Ma
Mom,
Mount Ma Mount or
mom, Mohammed.
I don't know,
I,
y'all. I don't want to even. I feel terrible, but yeah,
and
I that was the only one where I guess I did, but that was the only one I think I
what
was
we said,
actually
we
like
asked the kids
scared.
to make sure we pronounce their names correct.
You said what? Hello?
I didn't hear her. You're muted, Victoria.
I said maybe she wasn't talking to us. I'm sorry. They
Maybe.
keep but
Uh,
that was the
we
only
lost her.
one that I was able to actually like I guess self-reflect on because that was the only one I was alive for. I know that sounds crazy, but
The only one you what?
the only one I was here for, technically, like born. I was born by then, so that was like the only one I was able to do that with. But
Right.
yeah, it does put it into perspective. Even like, and it also makes you remember different events that have occurred like throughout your life too that you've been through. So like for me, I just know about like if I talk about big movements that have really occurred that like were significant to me that I actually partaked in. Of course, I did Black Lives Matter. I was marching. I actually marched for that. The water in I cannot remember the name. The water in Flint, Michigan. I remember like that crisis. Like I feel like this put me back into like remembering how it feels to like you said, like not be going through it, but could only imagine, and you feel so like kind of helpless and kind of like, I wish I could be doing more. Or I wish I could be doing something, but I feel like we live in a day and time where it's harder to do that now than it's ever been before because you're struggling to take care of yourself. Like, so it's kind of like, it's harder. But I definitely understand where you were coming from with that perspective of
Mhm.
being like, I was just sitting around while all of this was happening.
Right.
And it's good to identify that, because that could be something that fuels a child in the classroom to want to stand up, to create.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people when I was in high school would create organizations that they found like a passion for. One of which became a nonprofit for one of my friends. Yeah, the B Club for Girls, and she's trying to get it like to the same status of HOSA in school settings. You know what I mean? Like, so I definitely understand the importance of that, and I'm glad that you did highlight that.
So in
I
all, I mean, I really did enjoy the book. I was kind of dreading it, but I
mm-hmm.
actually truly like feel like I was in there.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely puts you into that space. I'm trying to log on here because my phone is about to die and I'm not sure how long we have been on, but I'm trying to log in on a different account.
We started
But
at about 4:35.
35,
It's
okay.
5:09.
Okay, yeah, I definitely
So
need to try to get on
my
here.
question: how would we, you know, see? We have the perspective of three kids in the story, right? So how would
Mm-hmm.
we make that connection? How would we make that connection in the classroom? Like, how would we make this relevant with our kids in the classroom?
See,
How would we
I
Okay,
think
you can go first.
in my opinion, just them hearing it from the kid's perspective is going to give them more buy-in to learning about it. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense?
Yeah, and which is what I was thinking. Is if we do a author study and went through it, and because it is three different perspectives, so be for children, it's probably an easy way to introduce it and engage them is to probably break it into the sections, like how
Yeah,
you
that's what I was gonna say.
yeah.
I would Yeah, I would break it into sections, or I would connect it to like current events, kind of like what we were saying before, like maybe something that they're going through now in their lifetime that they can connect it to and understand like these are similar. Like, it might not be the same because these people went through this or these people went through that, but they're similar in the fact that they all struggled this way. You know what
That's
I
good.
mean? So I would try to incorporate it there. And then of course like integrating it across different subject matters, like, how we do things of that nature. Like of course it may be a topic for social studies or but we can integrate it when we're teaching language arts, when we're teaching that, so that it's like a reminder. Uh yeah, those are the only two off the top of my head I kind of got.
Yeah, I
But
was just trying to think because as a, like I said, I'm not at the end yet, but as I was reading, I was like, this is three different kids, three different areas, three different cultures, three different things. It's,
mhm.
how could you, because our classrooms are so diverse. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
It's like, how
Yeah.
could you bring it together in a way where, you could, and like you said, you could probably put it over different, I guess, whether social studies or, you could just reading, you could probably spread it out. But I'm just saying in
Mhm.
terms of reading a story and just making a connection, like, I was just thinking of questions I would possibly ask. I was just thinking, just how could I really make a connection with the kids? Apart from just saying, what would you do if you were in this situation? You know what
Right.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
How could I make it truly relevant to them?
We'll
Yeah.
put that in
No.
our question for the teacher.
Yeah, that is a teacher question. That's me thinking of the other side of it. But I do like Joseph.
That was your
I
favorite?
do like Joseph. Yeah, I think, yeah, I was drawn more to Joseph. So far, I'm drawn more to Joseph. And it's probably because, from the beginning, it's like he just seemed like he was stronger. He was strong in how he was
Resilient.
saying, uh, yeah, he just came off like really strong from the get-go. That's just me,
Mhm.
you know. So, but Joseph is my favorite so far.
And see,
Yeah, I can.
to
Go
me, the
ahead.
Syria one, where they're given all of the descriptions about being in the boat and the boat hitting the rocks and him saving his mom. Like to me, I think that one hit home for me the most.
But can you imagine? Can you
No,
imagine as a child to have experienced
no.
something like that?
Or even
That
that
there
your
was,
house was bombed and part of your apartment is gone. Like I
yeah,
can't even imagine seeing that.
yeah, and it just blows my mind how strong these kids can be, and yet, that's why we as teachers, we have to sometimes stop and think about the kids that walk in our classroom, because sometimes they walk in with a lot of luggage, and
Mhm.
here you are telling them to do some morning work.
And
You know what I'm
it's funny
saying?
we've had this conversation almost every time too, is
Yeah,
knowing your kids and what they're going through.
exactly, because we may have a Joseph sitting in the room, you
Yes.
know,
Right.
who have been through so much, and you're asking to do some morning work. It's like,
Yeah.
no, at this moment he just wants to just take a breath. Just
Yep.
give him yeah, and I always say, try to give your kids grace. Try to,
Right.
give them, if they seem like they're stressed, give them time to breathe, because they
Yeah.
may need that moment just to recollect, to come back in.
Yep.
Because Joseph may
Yeah.
be reflecting on something that he went through.
That's what I was gonna
Yeah,
say. Like you,
yeah.
you talked about his resilience.
Uh-uh.
Oh, she did say that her thing was going dead.
She did.
Yeah, I think she was going to reflect back on Joseph being so resilient, and I
Mhm.
think all three of them shows resilience so far. But I feel like Joseph, from the get go, he was standing up. From the beginning, he's like, I'm going to be a man soon. That you could actually visualize this
Yes.
little kid trying to be strong.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But like you, I should have broken the book up by sections and read it that way instead of trying to it was like a series.
Yeah, it was hard doing it the other way. So I'm sure there's a purpose in reading it in order, but I couldn't wrap my head around it.
Yeah. Um, anything else that we've skipped so far?
I don't think so. And I think she'll be okay with our time not being as long because of Paola not being here too.
Yeah, and it's only, yeah. I mean, I think we've done pretty well. We've touched on all of the readings.
We have.
Um, touched on all of the readings.
I haven't taken the quiz yet, have you?
I haven't taken the quiz yet, and I usually try to take the quiz after we meet,
Yeah.
but I guess now I'm thinking to myself that well, this is the last book club meeting, so it doesn't matter anyways.
And last
But
quiz too.
the last quiz, these quiz had me stressed out. I'm not gonna lie, they had
Same.
me so stressed out where I feel like I read everything. I try to double read everything. It's a lot of reading, so it takes a lot of time to kind of truly digest all of the material. And
Yes.
so I'm doing all this reading, and then when I take the quiz and she asks a question, and I'm be like, "Oh my gosh!" and I feel like I'm fumbling to respond sometimes, even though I
Yeah.
know that I've read it, I know it. I always have to go back and reflect back on it, because I feel like I'm fumbling. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I failed the first one, and I haven't failed anything since high school, and that's been a long time.
Yeah, and that's a lot on your shoulders, and I've done pretty well. It's just that I feel like I could have done better because I know I've read the material, so I should have been
Hmm.
I should be doing better. But hey, it is what it is.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. I guess
Welcome
that's
back,
it.
Victoria.
All right. So how are we with our time so far? How many minutes we have?
So it's 5:17. We started at 5:35. I really think she'll be okay though, since Paola is not able to give her input.
Okay. All right.
I mean, do y'all think we've skipped anything? I
I don't
don't.
think we've skipped any. We've done about 40 minutes of it. She said at least 40 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think
Mm-hmm.
we're good. I think we should be fine.
Victoria, have you taken the test, the quiz? I don't think she can hear us.
I can
No.
hear you now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Just
Have you taken the
okay.
quiz?
I remember what I was talking about though.
Oh, okay.
But you were talking about resilience. I don't know. I always relate things back to personal experiences because I feel like they help me understand like different perspectives of the world. So when you were talking about like his resilience in the book, and I believe Amy had seconded in saying, no, you were saying like he's not ready to focus on anything else other than, maybe what he might be going through at home. I know personally, I really, really
Hello, this is Mark Wiggins.
appreciated the teachers and people growing up who acknowledged that I was resilient, that I did have a lot on my plate, that I was not only taking care of myself, but my siblings, and running here and running and doing this and that for like my family, when I felt like as a child, it should be a reversed role. But I appreciated that acknowledgement in the classroom setting of like, okay, well, Victoria might be going through something right now. Like, let's leave her. I appreciated it. While
That
not
is a big
every
deal.
student, yeah, it is. It's a huge deal. And while every student might not appreciate it, I think it's important to figure out the best approach there, because if I didn't have that growing up, I could only imagine how alone and how isolated I would feel at times, before, even if I'm even reflecting on the times before it was even acknowledged by anyone, like I did feel alone and by myself a lot of the time. Like I went through one period, like middle school, everyone was so scared because I would not talk. Like I went from being the most like outgoing, like I was in every club. We had to buy the fourth grade yearbook because my picture, like I was in dance and this and that. And then once I got into middle school, I shut off. Like I completely cut off because I was just so overwhelmed with everything that had just went on there that I just couldn't take it. And I lost myself in books. Like I wouldn't even talk. Like I just lost myself in books. Like, and I guess that goes back to the importance of books, you know, like, because that was like my Twilight era, my Hunger Games era. I was so deeply immersed in those texts during
And
that
Victoria, you know what? I want to make a connection with that because as a young person growing up on the island, the way that I traveled, even though my parents would have me traveling when I was younger, the way that I made a connection with the world around me was through books. Books were the key to keep me engaged in the world around me. It's like I would read about something, and that is how I would make a connection with things outside my little circle of where I was. And so I can, you saying that truly speaks to me because that's how I made my connection is through books.
Right.
And you know what's funny is I grew up really poor. And so we didn't have books and all. So the only world I knew was whatever was in my life or whatever I was taught at school.
And you know what? The way I got book was a teacher. She had a little shelf in the back, and she would allow us to borrow things from, we could read it and then put it back, read it and put it back. But we didn't have a true library. So my mom would, whenever she traveled, and whenever I would come to the States, I would be able to get stuff and then bring it back home. But it wasn't a constant where like here where you could check books out of it. It was like one book and I read it over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. So, that it's amazing how we can make that connection now. So that truly spoke to me, Victoria, when you said that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
And so hearing that, we need to give our kids that opportunity as well.
Yes. We have to make sure we put those books in their hands, one. And two, we have to be the champions, I should say, in the classroom and making sure we have these moments with introducing these books with them and having these engaging conversations with them.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'm looking at a bookshelf as we speak about it, thinking about what's on there. But yeah, and that's what my project has been about too. I know we can talk about that too, but like, just like I've been, I guess for that, a lot of it is like, I've been taking first donations and then I have some that I've personally bought myself. But I felt like the importance in donations was being able to allocate for like different families who might want something pushed, a little bit more. So that was like my biggest goal there with that. So I definitely agree. It's important. It's very important to stock those shelves because that's literally all my project is about, because I grew up in between everything. So it was like, I can't say I grew up poor, I grew up rich, because like 1 month it would be this, and then the next month it would be something completely different. So it was just like, I'm confused now. Like, how's life supposed to be? Am I supposed to be like,
but
it was kind of
back
like
to
that.
What you said, Victoria, it's that background has made you who you are today.
Who I am.
Who you are today. So we got to reflect back on that.
Yeah.
All right, ladies. What time is it? I have that appointment. I have to make it.
5:24. We're good.
We're good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We're good on time. I think she said 50 minutes. 50 minutes. We usually go over, but
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. It's been a pleasure, ladies. I'm gonna go ahead and run.
Okay. I'll top up some notes probably Saturday, and I'll send them to y'all.
All right, no problem.
Is this the last meeting?
It is.
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay. Well, it's been a wonderful time with you, ladies. You guys have a great end of the school year and have a great appointment.
Thank you. Bye, ladies.
Bye.
Bye.